When you hear the words praise and worship, what comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's probably singing a few songs in church on a Sunday morning. But what if it's something way more ancient, way more active, and honestly, way more powerful than that? What if it represents a fundamental shift in how we can even relate to God? In this explainer, we're going to trace the incredible journey of praise, from this exclusive temple ritual to a dynamic, personal relationship that's available to every single one of us. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that huge shift from ritual to relationship. Then we'll dissect the anatomy of praise by looking at its original Hebrew roots. After that, we'll dig into why it's actually commanded in the first place. From there, we'll get practical and look at different ways to worship found in Scripture, talk about the very real barriers that can hold us back, and finally, we'll uncover the incredible prophetic power this practice is said to unleash. Okay, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on praise today, you have to go back and understand this massive paradigm shift that happened between the Old and New Covenants, and it all centers on this idea of the priesthood. See, under the Old Covenant, the priesthood was basically an exclusive club. You had to be a son of Aaron. It involved all these really complicated rituals and animal sacrifices, a whole system that's described as just a shadow of things to come. But then with the New Covenant, everything gets flipped on its head. The priesthood becomes inclusive. Every single believer is now considered a priest, and instead of animal sacrifices, we're called to offer spiritual sacrifices. And you know what one of the main ones is? Praise, the fruit of our lips. Those complicated rituals, they're gone, replaced by direct access to God. The shadow gives way to the real thing. So, if every believer is now a priest, and our main job is to offer up praise, what exactly is biblical praise? To figure that out, we've got to go back to the original language, because the definitions there are so incredibly active and full of life. It's not what you might think. Just to look at these Hebrew words, they paint such a vivid picture. The most common one is halal. And yep, that's where we get alleluia. It means to produce a clear sound, to celebrate, even to rave about something. Then you've got shabak, which is literally a shout of triumph. Yada is all about giving thanks, and it often involves physically extending your hands. And barak is that simple, profound act of just kneeling in adoration. You see the theme here? This is not a passive internal feeling. It's an action. So when you put all that together, you see that praise is this holistic thing. It involves your body acting out what your spirit is perceiving. It involves making an audible sound. It's something you do, not just something you think. And this is huge. It's a healthy emotional release. I mean, God created our emotions, right? Well, praise is presented as the God-ordained way to express them for His glory. It's your spirit, your soul, and your body all working together. Now, this brings up a really interesting question. If praise is such a natural, emotional expression, why does the Bible have to command it so often? I mean, shouldn't it just happen? Well, the reasons given in the source material are super important and are said to bring some very real benefits. Well, for starters, praise ye the Lord isn't a friendly suggestion. It's a command. It's seen as a direct way to glorify God, but it goes deeper. The text says God literally inhabits or dwells in the praises of His people, which creates this atmosphere of His presence. And that presence in turn generates spiritual power, helping believers go from strength to strength. This leads to a really key principle. Praise comes before the victory. The classic example is King Jehoshaphat. I mean, think about this. He sent the choir out in front of his army. As they started to sing and praise, their enemies were miraculously defeated. That's a game changer. So if praise is this active, powerful thing that even leads armies to victory, what does it actually look like in practice? Well, the scriptures are full of specific physical examples of worship that get your whole person involved. Of course, it starts with the one we all know and love, singing. It's just a universal, joyful way to come before God, a natural response that bubbles up from the heart. But it's not all quiet hymns and gentle melodies. The scriptures also call for shouting, a voice of triumph. This isn't about being loud for the sake of being loud. It's a powerful declaration of victory and absolute confidence in God's power. And the physical expression just keeps going with clapping your hands. You know, just like you'd applaud an amazing performance, this is a way to show gladness, joy, and total approval for what God has done. And yeah, it can even involve our whole bodies. Dancing is described as this spontaneous, joyful celebration. We're not talking about some stiff, choreographed routine here, but just leaping and moving with pure gladness before the Lord. And finally, there's the simple but incredibly profound act of raising your hands. It's a universal symbol, isn't it? It signifies surrender, reverence, and just this deep, personal desire to connect with God. Okay, so we've talked about shouting, dancing, raising hands, and let's be honest, for some of us that can feel a little intimidating, right? It doesn't always feel easy or comfortable. So let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. This is a very real question. You might be sitting there thinking, yeah, that's just not my personality. Or, oh man, I would feel so self-conscious doing that. And those are completely common and understandable feelings. The source material actually points out several specific barriers that tend to get in our way. Let's break down these 5 major hindrances. First, unconfessed sin can definitely create a wall that keeps you from feeling free. Then there's pride, that little voice that's always worried about how we look to others. That's tied directly to the fear of man, where we let what other people might think dictate what we do. Sometimes it's even man-made religious traditions that tell us to be quiet and still, which can actually contradict these scriptures. And finally, there's just plain old worldliness, a mindset that's so focused on temporary things that it cools our passion for the eternal. But what happens when we do manage to push past those barriers, when people truly enter into what the Bible calls praise? Well, according to our source, this is where it gets really interesting. It's not just about personal expression anymore. This is about unlocking a profound prophetic power. Check out this verse from Psalm 149. It's presented as the ultimate weapon for a believer. The high praises of God in your mouth are directly compared to a two-edged sword in your hand. Wow, this frames praise as so much more than celebration. It's an instrument of spiritual authority, of spiritual warfare, that's capable of paving the way for victory. And this prophetic power is seen as having this incredible cascading effect, like a chain reaction, which you can see in Psalm 67. It all starts when God's people praise. That's the catalyst. That's the first domino to fall. Then, that praise begins to spread until all people start praising, and this leads to the ultimate outcome: entire nations becoming glad and singing for joy. The implication here is huge, that the praise of a few could actually trigger a global movement that establishes God's justice and blessing across the whole planet. So this leaves us with one final, provocative thought to chew on. If praise the command that brings God's presence, if it's a weapon that comes before victory, and if it's a catalyst for global transformation, could it be more than just a song we sing? Could it, in fact, be the very sound of the future breaking into our present?